Emirates Airline is always ahead of the curve when it comes to changes in the aircraft industry as a whole. Sir Tim Clark, the CEO of Emirates Airline, has said again that he agrees with Emirates' request that Airbus build a version of the A380neo with new engines. He thinks that putting in the next-generation power plant could cut fuel use by up to 25%. The need to make the A380 more fuel efficient. Clark mentioned at the Paris Air Forum on June 16th that both the Engine Alliance GP7200 and the Rolls-Royce Trent 900 engines that are currently running the Emirates A380 fleet were designed in the 1990s. He thinks that using a new engine like the Rolls-Royce UltraFan could lead to big efficiency improvements. Clark's request for a more fuel-efficient A380 is not just about making the airline's finances better. It's about coming up with ways to make air travel better for the world. Fuel use and pollution would go down by 25%, which would be a big step forward for the aviation industry, which is facing more and more pressure to make its activities less harmful to the environment. What Rolls-Royce UltraFan can do and what it could do. Rolls-Royce put its UltraFan tester through its paces for the first time on April 24th. The test went well. The company thinks that the design could be used to make single and twin aisle planes that need between 25,000 pounds or 111 kilonewtons and 100,000 pounds of thrust in the future. 84,000 pounds can be carried by the Trent 900. Clark thinks that a new A380 with UltraFan engines will give a step change in how much fuel it uses. It's not just a matter of making the A380 run more smoothly. The goal is to set a new standard for the whole business as a whole, the need for the A380 and where it's going. Clark is quick to point out that customers still like the A380 a lot. The week before last, 87 of Emirates' 116 planes were in service, and 82% of those trips were full. This shows that, even though the airline business has been having trouble over the past few years, the A380 is still a favorite among passengers. Airbus, on the other hand, is ignoring Clark's calls for a re-engineered A380neo. They always laugh at me, he says, and I believe him. I'm the odd one out, and I'm just saying what I know to be true. They might decide not to deal with that, but I'm just saying what I know to be true. Clark still has hope, even after everything that has happened. He thinks that the Airbus A380neo could change the airline industry if it had the right engine. How things look for the A380. Even though there are problems, Clark stays happy and optimistic about the A380's future. He thinks that the A380neo, with the right engine, has the potential to completely change the aviation business by reducing emissions and fuel use by a large amount. But it's still not clear whether or not Airbus would listen to his request. There's a lot of doubt about the future of the A380 and the aviation business as a whole. One thing is clear though. As long as industry leaders like Clark keep pushing for innovation and sustainability, the market will keep changing in interesting ways. How it feels to take the shortest flight in the world, a luxury showering experience. On the Emirates A380, first-class guests can use a shower spa that is built into the plane. But the famous shower spa, which lets first-class passengers take a full shower at an altitude of 35,000 feet, will continue to be the thing that makes Emirates Super Jumbo stand out the most. At the end of the plane's planning process in the early 2000s, Clark asked for 2 of these suites to be put at the front of the upper deck. Emirates is the only airline that has these rooms right now, which came about because Clark asked for them. He says Airbus came up with a pretty sad idea of putting benches and little lounges there. But the idea that there would be bathrooms with showers and all the other little things was an interesting one. We took a bit of a risk by doing this, but these were dead areas where we couldn't make any money. After giving it some thought, I came to the conclusion that they would do very well. Airbus, on the other hand, wasn't the easiest company to convince to put them in. We made plans for the showers and then went to Airbus, which at the time was pretty closed off, says Clark. At the time, they didn't want to change. But before the A380 came out, the marketing program had double-page spreads of the shops, bars, and cafes. So I said, this shouldn't be a problem for you. Obviously it was, but because there were such a big business, they did what we asked. Then getting water up 2 desks while keeping pressure, temperature, and everything else the same is a Herculean job in and of itself. But we were successful. and they worked with us. So as they say, the rest is history. People have talked about these showers for years, and they still do. Keeping an eye on the coming years. The Airbus A350-1000 is one of the biggest planes that can be bought right now. The author writes, "This has been a very bad time for air travel, and as a result, the airline industry is full of people who tend to be more cautious. There have been a lot of people who have lost their shirts in the airline business, so they tend to be more cautious. But things are starting to look a lot better today, and it looks like demand is going up again, so that they can think about the years to come with some seriousness. I can't say for sure if they have the guts to do it or not. I'm sure that we've got it." Jeff Van Claveren, an aviation analyst and managing head of advice at independent aviation consultant IBA, agrees with Clark that a bigger jet is needed, but he thinks it will be hard to get one in the near future. The executive said there is definitely a need for a replacement for the Boeing 747, but I don't think there's enough demand to start a program for an airplane bigger than the A380. I don't think Airbus or Boeing will make one just for them, he says, adding that the most likely outcome is that an even bigger, higher capacity version of the A350 and the 777 will be made instead. Because 70% of Emirates passengers connect to other trips, they need a very big plane to run their business. Clark, on the other hand, will not be moved. "I've talked with Airbus more than once," he says. The person said, "I think they are starting to take it a little bit more seriously, but right now they are focusing on their single-aisle jets and the A350 line. But he is very much a geek and will only do what his engineers and technology will let him do. I think that people like Guillaume Faury, the CEO of Airbus, would really like to see something like this, and he probably sees it as a business necessity. But he is a scientist at heart and will only do what his engineers and technology let him do." Clark doesn't feel very optimistic after seeing how the pandemic has messed up with travel, with uncanceled flights, never-ending lines at security, and piles of lost bags. He says, "I think this will keep going on until the summer of next year. I think you'll see more of this," he said. "By no stretch of the imagination can we say that we are out of the woods. As more markets like China, Japan, and Korea open up, the problem will get worse until airports like Heathrow, Frankfurt, and Amsterdam get their acts together and start putting people in the right places." The CEO of Emirates has said that he is amazed at how travelers can put up with all this, but he has asked them to keep being patient for the time being. "I see strong demand for the next year," he adds. "It's a tough one, but my gut tells me that the airline industry will be fine in a year. And things will get better gradually when we get back to normal. This could happen in the middle of next year, or at the end of next year. It's a patchy one, but it's telling me that either the middle of next year or the end of next year." Thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for more.